Even so, we keep the tribe's rituals. Otherwise, we might become like the faithless old ones, who turned their backs on the goddess. But their wickedness doomed them. To us, were left the splendors of creation, beasts of air, water, earth, and steel.
Horizon Zero Dawn, the latest game from Killzone developer Guerrilla Games, is already under a lot of pressure. Not only is it one of the first big releases of 2017, but it's one of the biggest guns in the PlayStation 4's exclusive lineup for the year. A new IP, a new heroine, a new engine. Even after a fantastic debut and some serious hype, Horizon Zero Dawn still has a lot left to prove. There's a lot to cover when it comes to Horizon. Not only is the game massive in scope, but Guerrilla Games have pulled from a number of other gaming franchises to create one of the most eclectic sandboxes in recent memory. While there's nothing wrong with pulling inspiration from other successful franchises, that doesn't necessarily guarantee success. Thankfully, Horizon Zero Dawn manages to blend its different ideas into a cohesive, and more importantly, fun, open-world action game. Players take on the role of Aloy, a young woman surviving the harsh wild of a post-apocalyptic Earth. Giant robotic animals roam the planet, leaving humankind to fight for its very survival. As one might expect, it doesn't take long for Aloy to get swept up in a worldwide conspiracy, forcing her to leave home in search of answers. To put it bluntly, the first few hours of the story are rough. Aloy is enjoyable enough, but the story of an outcast trying to fit into society is downright generic. It's far too easy to predict exactly what will happen, and it's not nearly interesting enough to create any sort of emotional attachment. Once the intro is out of the way, Horizon's story does get better. The game's world and the people in it manage to create a setting that's both far-flung and believably grounded. Given that this is a world where giant robot dinosaurs roam the wilderness, that's saying something. It definitely helps that many of the player's actions actually make an impact. Seeing decisions and questlines come full circle as the game progresses is a great touch, and does a lot to make Horizon's side quests feel like more than inconsequential errands. But it's the story of the machines and their origins that's the true star of the show. Horizon's AI-centric plot may be a new take on an established concept, but a number of genuinely surprising twists and a distinct identity keep it from feeling stale. Sadly, the pacing is extremely lopsided. The story becomes an unrelenting deluge of information during its second half, and it can be overwhelming at times. What's worse is that Aloy's personal story doesn't hold up nearly as well. Her storyline takes a backseat for far too long, and the main villain doesn't have enough of a presence throughout the game to feel like a real threat. By the time the credits roll, the whole revenge plot feels like more of a side note than anything. As a whole, characterization is flawed. Aloy herself is enjoyable, and some of the side characters are great, but nearly everyone else is either forgettable or entirely unlikable. For whatever reason, Aloy's closest ally is an absolute prick throughout the entire game, while the central villains are basically non-existent. It's completely backwards, and choices like these derail the story on more than one occasion. Simply put, the plot of Horizon Zero Dawn is all over the place. Some parts of the story are fantastic, while others drag the entire experience down. Personal tastes will be a factor in your enjoyment of the story, but once it gets going, the good usually outweighs the bad.
You understand? You are on your own.
Anyone who's played an open-world game from the past 10 years will know exactly what to expect from Horizon Zero Dawn. The entirety of the game's single-player story takes place in a massive, seamless map, filled to the brim with NPCs, quests, and hidden collectibles. Players complete story missions to advance the plot, and side quests to earn optional rewards. Scaling specific machines will reveal large portions of the map, and fast travel points open up as players explore the world. At first glance, it might seem like Horizon's strict adherence to the standard open-world formula wouldn't leave much room for new ideas. And while that's true in some respects, it's also selling the game short. The overall structure may be familiar, but the gameplay itself is an entirely different beast. With a focus on stealth, ancient weaponry, and RPG mechanics, one would be forgiven for assuming that playing through Horizon Zero Dawn is a slow, methodical experience. In reality, that's only half true. Players will spend the majority of their time with Horizon doing one of two things: engaging enemy combatants head-on or sneaking around them. Combat and movement are fast and loose, while simultaneously rewarding those who play with precision. It's possible to sprint into a camp and let off a slew of arrows quickly, but it's far more satisfying to pick off enemies one at a time with carefully placed shots. Human enemies, for the most part, don't provide much resistance. Their sheer numbers can be a threat, and more powerful variants are introduced as the game goes on, but they don't hold a candle to the robotic enemies that players will go up against. Without the ability to take out a target with a single shot, combat against the machines takes on a far more tactical feel. Weapon choice, enemy layouts, terrain, available ammo, healing items, everything has to be taken into consideration before taking the first shot. Actual combat is a chess game of positioning, targeting weak points, and isolating weaker enemies, and it's a blast from beginning to end. Fights against multiple machines can be a bit too chaotic for their own good, and certain enemy types are overpowered, but these issues are minor in the grand scheme of things. Of course, the weaponry is more complicated than just bows and arrows. Aloy's arsenal does a fine job of both encouraging experimentation and allowing players to find a specific style that works for them. Different ammo types and elemental status effects offer even more variety, though the upgrade system isn't quite as successful. Purchasing or crafting better gear is definitely helpful, but grinding for the specific parts required to do so relies entirely on random chance. Get ready to hunt a lot of rabbits. Skill points and leveling up are the final piece of the combat puzzle, and it's exactly what you would expect. More experience means more skills, such as slowing down time while aiming, or more powerful melee attacks. It's another way that players can customize their playstyle, but it's nothing new either. The rest of the gameplay is fun, if not entirely noteworthy. Puzzles and platforming are basically automatic, and don't provide any real sense of challenge or accomplishment. Collectibles are fun to find, but the rewards for unearthing them aren't anything special. Dialogue trees are an interesting addition, but there are only a few instances where Aloy's response actually changes anything. It's a shame that the smaller aspects of Horizon's gameplay aren't as polished as the core mechanics, but it's clear that Guerrilla Games focused on what matters. Combat feels great, and sneaking through an enemy encampment is extremely satisfying. It would have been nice if everything were as engaging as the combat, but Horizon nails its core gameplay so well that these small missteps are easy to forgive. From the moment that players press start, one thing is obvious. Horizon Zero Dawn is absolutely gorgeous. Nearly everything about the game's presentation is phenomenal. From the environments, to the character models, to the sound design, to the insane level of detail. Watching as Aloy or any one of the massive machines move through the environment is a sight to behold, and the sheer number of different animations is staggering. Lighting is another highlight, with the use of color and shadow standing head and shoulders above most other games in the industry. Horizon is a game that revels in creating atmosphere. But what really pulls everything together is the game's unparalleled sense of scale. True, there are plenty of games with massive open worlds, but few truly take advantage of their sandboxes. Horizon, on the other hand, is constantly using the scope of its world to amazing effect. It's huge, in every sense of the word, and it'll make your jaw drop more than once. Granted, the presentation isn't perfect. Facial animation is noticeably limited, and characters don't really emote. Some of the voice work, typically whenever children are involved, also falls short, and a few minor technical issues pop up from time to time. That being said, a few infrequent hangups aren't nearly enough to derail one of the best-looking games of this generation. Horizon Zero Dawn is both an artistic and technical marvel, and proof that there's still plenty of room to grow in the current generation of consoles. Horizon isn't a perfect game. The story is unfocused, the intro drags on for far too long, and the pacing is ridiculously unbalanced. But when looking at the bigger picture, it's easy to see just how good the game really is. It may draw its mechanics from a number of different series, but everything comes together so well that it's hard not to be impressed. It's also a technical masterpiece, with an unparalleled attention to detail and an infinitely impressive scale. The game may stick to some open-world traditions a bit too strictly, but at the end of the day, Horizon is still one of the most polished games in recent memory. If Horizon Zero Dawn is just the first piece of Sony's exclusive lineup in 2017, then PlayStation 4 owners have a lot to look forward to. Hey there, I'm Steve from Broken Base. Big shout out to Sony for making this review possible, and thank you for watching, dear viewer. If you'd like to see more of our videos, go ahead and check out the channel. And hey, if you want to see videos as soon as they come out, make sure to subscribe.